Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Paint. Today we're painting the Exaction Squad from Games Workshop's Kill Team. And before we begin, I just want to say thank you so much for all the recent love and support. And if you're new to the channel, feel free to drop a like and subscribe, as that really helps me out. Anyway, back to the video. So I'm going for a non-traditional paint scheme on these guys because, I mean, look at them. Really? But with that being said, I am a huge fan of this movie, and I think this color scheme is going to suit the miniatures really well. So I'm kicking things off here by assembling the miniatures as per the instructions. And I'm using plastic glue to assemble them, and then super glue to glue them onto the base. And I'm building them as their unique operatives, and then I think I've got 2 left over which I'm doing subductors with. And next I'm just going to tack them onto some caps ready for priming. I'm doing a black prime all over. And then my traditional highlighting of a white at a 45 degrees angle. And once they're all primed, I'm going to let most of the work be done by the contrast paints here. So I'm mixing a roughly 2-to-1 mix of Grim Black and Speedpaint Medium. And the really fun thing about interpreting costumes like this is taking these pieces that you're given and trying to decide how you're going to piece that out into the color scheme to make it appear like the character but not 100%. So here I'm just using the Grim Black and I'm applying it to things like the shins, the gauntlets, the chest, and the helmet. And basically any way you'd see it as normal leather on the Dredd costume. And if a character's holding a shield, I'll add it to that as well. And then moving on to the next distinguishable feature here is the red visor. So to interpret this, I just basically applied this to the front visor on these guys. And I want this fairly saturated, so I'm using Citadel colors Mephiston Red. To make my life easier, I probably should have done the black visor first, but just carefully going in there, and then if I make a mistake I'll just correct it with the red again. And I'm also using the red here for the Exactant's headdress. And now I'm using Elven Gold, and this is a scale color paint, and I'm applying this to the pauldrons. I find that scale color paints are really smooth with their metallics, and you don't often see like the flecks and things in the paint that you do with other metallics. And these guys don't have badges, so to interpret that, I'm kind of painting the box on their chest in the same gold. And there's a couple of characters with just a few more decorations, so I'm doing the headdress here in gold as well. Using the costume as reference, I'm making sure that I'm getting most of the areas in the same colors, so I'm doing the belt buckle here, and a few more details on some of the weapons like the shield. And there's one more noticeable place with gold on it, which is on the helmet. They don't have like a badge on their helmets here, but I'm just interpreting that as the stripe that's in the sculpt on the helmet. And for the Aquila token, I'm just doing the main eagle here in gold. And a couple of details on the Doggie. Now I'm using leather brown, and I noticed on the costume that the kind of in-between pieces of leather are kind of a lighter leather color. So to break up some of this black, I'm using this brown, and basically any of the joins and areas of cloth between the big black sections of armor, I'm doing in the leather brown. And I'm also getting the boots with this as well. And now we're using Angel Green, and I'm applying this to the elbow pads, the knee pads, and the tip of the boots as well. I did notice on the 2011 costume that there is some green. It's a little harder to see, but this is also like a nice callback to the classic costume from the comics. And to add some variation to some of these greys and blacks, I'm using Petroleum grey here. This is a warm grey, and I'm going to be using this for the holster and the belts and some of the straps as well. And I didn't like how uniform the boots were, so I'm just adding some of that petroleum grey to the sole of the boots. There's a lot of detail on these guys, so just where I feel like it needs it, I'll add some of this grey and black in here. I'm also using a Rhinox hide brown, and I'm applying this to the bandolier, some of the other pouches, and the holster for the shotgun as well. And I've pretty much got this gold on speed dial here, so I'm constantly going back and forth between these two colors. And this is a thinned down Grim Black with the Speedpaint Medium. I reversed the mix. This is a 1/3 Grim Black and 2/3 Medium. And I'm using this for any additional nightsticks and handcuffs and things like that. And for the wash, I'm going to be using MIG Productions Dark Wash and some odorless thinner. And I'm trying to achieve a really gross, grimy, realistic look on these guys. So I'm applying this wash basically to any of the pieces I've already painted up. I'm taking care to avoid some of the exposed primer, but this wash really does like soak into everything, and especially because I'm applying it pretty thick. And then here I'm going in with the odorless thinner, and I'm pulling away from some of the more noticeable areas. Now I'm switching over to Cloudburst Blue, and I'm using this for all of the weapons. Again, I'm trying to break up these areas of black. There's a lot of dark colors on the miniature. I'm also using Gravelord Grey, and I'm applying this to the base of the Aquila token. Okay, now I'm using some Tau Light Ochre, and I'm applying this to the sniper rifle. This is kind of just a little bit of fun I wanted to have. I wanted to incorporate some kind of warning chevrons, and I thought a good place to do this would be on the sniper rifle here. So here I'm using a black, and I'm just going in and tidying up some of those yellow lines and adding some black to it. I was really happy with the effect, so I decided to add it to the grenade launcher as well. And And to add some detail to the shields, I've decided to use that same yellow ochre, and I'm just penciling in some lines here. And then I'm just going to stipple on some of that yellow ochre and just kind of giving this more of a chipped paint look to it. And then to break up some of those outside edges, I've gone back to the black here and I'm just adding in just a few more chip marks and scratch marks. For the faces, I'm using quite a wide variety of skin tones, and I'm limiting myself to 2 per miniature. So what I'm doing here is I'm just going in with the darker of the 2 tones first, and I can afford to be messy. Any of the open mouth sculpts, I'm using the Slaughter Red contrast paint. And then I'm tidying up the face here. This is another Grim Black, and I'm just making sure I'm getting the sides of the cheeks, the chin. And then lastly, I'm using a lighter tone, and I'm just highlighting the edge of the cheek, the lip, things like that. And then I'm just repeating this process for all of the other miniatures, just switching out the 2 skin tones. And now I'm going to be using a mix of white, grey and black. I'm going to be mixing up all kinds of different grayscale tones. And I'm starting off with just a couple of glints on the visor. And this is a kind of a neutral grey. And then building up to a light grey. And then just the smallest white highlight on top of that. And then I'm switching back to the red just to tidy up some of that overspill. Okay, now I'm using Castellan Green. And I'm using this for the grenades. I probably could have done this in the base coating step before the wash, but this was just kind of me forgetting some stuff. And I'm using Victorian brass, and I'm using this for the shells on some of the belts and some of the details that I missed beforehand. I'm adding some detail onto the Malocator's gun, just to kind of pull him out from the crowd a little bit as well. I've gone back to the Slaughter Red, and I'm using this for any of the seals on the miniature's armor or weapons. And I'm using Xandru Dust, and I'll be applying this to the paper part of the purity seals. And then for a quick highlight on these, I'm going to be using Deck Tan. And I'm just very quickly just edge highlighting some of these wrinkles in the paper. And to finish out the seals, I'm using a Rhinox hide, and I'm just very quickly stippling on some lines to give the impression of text. Okay, for the next section, I'm going to be using the Tesseract Glow. And to prep for this, I'm going to be putting on some white onto the light on his chest here. And there's a light on the back of his armor as well. And then once that white is dry, I'm then using the Tesseract Glow, and this creates a really nice glow effect. And I'm going to be using some of those grays from earlier, so I'm just dry brushing on some of these batons. And this is a kind of a neutral grey, and then a slightly light grey, and then finally dry brushing on some white. Here I'm using some Nuln oil, and I'm just taking down some of that gradient just a little bit, and to add some more definition back into the dry brushing that I did. And I'm using a speed metal for my highlights. So I'm just adding this to the edges of the weapons here. I'm also using it as a kind of battle damage for any kind of metal on these guys. And you can see I'm just going around just making sure I'm getting all these final details on some of the metal chains and things. I'm also using it for some damage, and I'm just gently dragging the brush across just to create some scratches. And I forgot about the lights on the shields, so once again, a white undercoat and then some Tesseract glow on top. Here's some finishing touches for the armor. So I'm taking one of those neutral grays and I'm just edge highlighting some of these pieces of armor here, like the arms, the chest. I don't want to go too bright, so I'm just making sure that neutral gray is probably the brightest I'll go here. And then this is some grim black that I'm applying to some of these feathers and things. And then what I'll do is I'll dampen the brush and just feather out that transition a little bit more. Here's some final damage I'm just adding to the visors with some speed metal. For the Aquila token, I'm dry brushing on that neutral grey again. And then repeating that same recipe of a light grey and then an even smaller white highlight on top. Okay, for the bases, I'm going to be using a selection of different rocks and things here. So this is Army Painter's selection. And what I'm doing, this is a watered down PVA glue, and I'm just sprinkling on some of these rocks. And then for some of these bigger pieces, I'm just adding a dab of glue. After those are dry, I'm then taking a pretty dark grey and I'm just going all over the base, all over the rocks with this. And then I mixed up a light grey and I'm just gently dry brushing the rest of the base. I'm just trying to catch the edges of some of those rocks. And then for some added detail, I decided to add some kind of road markings, I guess. And this is just with some white. Similar to the shield, I'm just sketching in the line first and then roughly filling it in. And then I like to paint the rims of the bases black as well. I'm adding some decals, and this is my sort of standard recipe for decals. I go into more detail about this in another video, which I'll link here. And I'm just sponging on some black just to take off some of that white from the decals. And we can't forget about the little robo doggy, so we're going to use some graveyard grey for the legs. And I'm also applying this to the chest, the weird little pipe things, and the spine as well. And for his exposed fur, I'm going to be using dark wood. and this is just on his hindquarters here and on the neck. For the saddlebags, I'm matching it to the other recipe, which is a Rhinox hide for a couple of these, and then a Mournfang brown for the bigger saddlebags. I've gone back to the gold for the details on the bags as well. And for some of the lighter fur on his neck, I mixed up the deck tan with the Mournfang brown. And I'm applying it the same way I did the grey, which is just going gradually lighter until eventually you're doing pure deck tan. I'm also using deck tan for the inside of the ears as well. I'm adding some of that enamel wash to the saddlebags. And I'm going in with some of those grey highlights, just hitting some of the edges of the legs and the pipes and things on his back. And here I am working on the head. In a minute, I actually changed my mind on this color scheme. But for now, you can just kind of enjoy the process I went through, just playing with some of the colors. I didn't quite like the red on the jowls, so I slept on it and decided to try to match his head to the rest of the helmets of the other troopers. He's a good boy, so he can be a judge. So I added some red to the eyebrows, the black for the top of the head, and then his muzzle is in gold. And there you have it, the Exaction Squad ready to make some arrests. What do you guys think? Did I achieve a Judge Dredd look to these miniatures? Let me know in the comments below. I have a ton of fun making these videos, so if you like this kind of content, please leave a like and subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Happy painting and happy gaming!